time now for the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. And now, here she is, the smart, the sexy, the savvy, divine Miss C.
And welcome to the show. Now, today I have with me credit consultant Pamala McCoy, and we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is financial literacy. This is something I think actually everybody should take a course in, and then the economy wouldn't be in the trouble that it was in. You need to be financially literate. Pam and I are both credit consultants, but we do it slightly differently. We're in different venues. Many people don't understand how important it is to understand their finances. It's a subject that's not really talked about in high school or many colleges, unless you're a finance or a business major. So, Pam, I'm glad you could be here today. And I want to start with a little bit about your professional background and what made you want to be a credit consultant.
Well, Laurie, my background is I've been in the industry over 25 years. I graduated from North Carolina State University with a degree in business management with a concentration in economics. Went through the Sears management training program on the credit side. And so in that experience, I was able to learn all things credit from the bottom to the top. We spent time with the CEO. We spent time with the janitor who ordered the toilet paper. And everything in between. So upon graduating from that program, I had assignments managing authorizations, new accounts, setting up new accounts, underwriting. Did that for a few years, then moved on to customer service, managed that arena for a couple of years. And then ended up in what we used to call in the industry the collection clutches.
I laugh with you on that because I understand that, yeah.
Exactly. But in that, I fell in love. I absolutely love collections because though most people think of it as a negative end of the business, it afforded me the opportunity to educate, to empower individuals and teach them and to help them be that beacon of light in their most distressing period in their life, which is typically brought on by just life happening. It's a facade to say that most people that are delinquent are just deadbeats.
No, they're usually divorce or medical
Absolutely.
issues. Something usually happened.
Life has happened to them in some way. And so they're so overwhelmed by their circumstances, they can't see the forest for the trees, as I say. And so to be able to help them maneuver through and problem solve and come up with a solution, I can't grow their money. I can't allow them to spend their money twice. We all only get to spend it once.
Right.
What you have is what you have, but it afforded me the opportunity to teach them how to manage well what they had to accomplish whatever goals that they had.
It's the living within your means speech.
Absolutely. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And how do you decide how much you keep is from the education.
Got it. Now, talk about your book, because I know you recently wrote a book. I got my copy today to read. Tell us about that and also where it can be purchased and what you're covering.
All righty. Well, excited about my first book. It's called Bonafide Bits, and the Bonafide, of course, is the name of my company, Bonafide Credit Consultants, which by definition, though it's spelled differently, it's spelled B-O-N-A, the number 5-D. It is pronounced bona fide, and the definition is the same as bona fide, which is genuine intent and honest and all of those things, and that is the foundation of my company. So the name of my book is Bonafide Bits, where inspiration and intellect collide with your finances. It's a nice, easy read. It's only 69 pages. It's going to give you an inspiration, and that inspiration could have come from scripture, a billboard, a sticker, something someone said, something that I read somewhere, and it will give you that inspiration. It'll give you a life application of the inspiration as well as a financial application of that inspiration. It's broken down, the book, in 5 categories, and I call them categories as opposed to chapters. And those categories are the principles of my company, which are to educate, to empower, to evolve, to enlighten, and to enrich. Which you can see on my T-shirt.
I can. Your E5 T-shirt.
My
E5
T-shirt.
Yeah.
The book, the E5 T-shirt, and I also have another T-shirt which expresses a term that I always say when you really just can't explain it. God is so crazy cool. So,
he might just be crazy, though.
It's really cool, the things that he's able to do with so little sometimes. But all of them can be purchased at my website, which is www.bonafide, and again, that's BONA, the number 5, DCC.com. bonafidecc.com.
Very good. Now, nowadays, you primarily give financial literacy seminars. What might your seminars cover? I mean, are they different for different venues?
Yes. Each one of my seminars are customized to the client. So whoever is my point of contact at the entity, we'll sit down, we'll have some dialogue as to who they anticipate the audience being, topics that they specifically want me to cover or to emphasize. But a typical workshop is 4.5 to 5 hours. But I have had to do them a la carte, or we've done like a lunch and learn. So maybe the entity doesn't have 5 hours that they can pull their staff or employees or what have you away from what they're doing. So we'll do it during lunch. So it'll be a series, so to speak, an hour during lunch, and we'll get to a stopping point and come back and pick up where we left off.
Okay. Now let's actually go into some of the stuff I got from you, some of the information. I want to talk about general credit information. Mm-hmm. So let's go through some of these topics, and maybe you can talk a little bit about each one. Let's talk about one of my favorites, debt. People are in debt. I think I read recently and it depends, of course, on whose statistics you read, but one of them I read was the average person in America is in debt for $15,000 a year in credit card debt.
Credit card.
That's a shocker because they don't really realize, I don't think, how interest rates work. So maybe talk about debt.
Absolutely. Well, debt, in the seminars, I spend quite a bit of time because you're absolutely correct. The average consumer, so I won't say all, I'll say a large portion, really don't understand the concept of the true cost of credit, as I phrase it. And that is, what is the interest rate on the credit card? And if you're not in a position to pay it in full every month, which is the utopia and the goal that I set for each and every one of my participants and clients, is to get in a position that they're able to pay their credit cards off in full each month. But until you get there, the interest rate that you are being assessed is very important. There's a huge difference in 10% and 20% or 25% on a credit card when you actually do the math. And so it's so important, that you clearly understand how that structure is, as well as not paying late.
That's a credit report destroyer.
Not only does it adversely affect your credit report, but you're also assessed an additional fee, and those fees now have increased tremendously over the years. So a late fee on a credit card could be, $27 to $30 or what have you, and that's just free money that you're giving away. And
people don't realize that the banks make such a large portion of their money on the fees that they're assessing through the population. They statistically already know what percentage of people are going to pay and fail based upon these fees. And I don't think a lot of people actually realize it unless they notate it.
Absolutely. And so before you pull out that plastic and excitement to get this purchase that, if we back up, is it a need, is it a want, or is it a desire? Before, we pull out that plastic to make that purchase, we need to understand the rules of the game. And that is, what is it truly going to cost me to use this card today? It
is. And, I know when we had lunch recently, I probably told you the story about my dad who, growing up when I was 17, I went away to college. Mm-hmm. And so he gave me a credit card where I was an authorized user on an account where he was not going to use that particular card. And I remember him saying, and he was 6'3", and he said to me, "You can't destroy my credit. You must pay this credit card off every month. You can never make a late payment or I'm going to kill you," kind of thing.
Right.
And so that stuck with me now. When I was younger in my 20s, did I use that credit card and carry balances? Yeah, I wanted it. It wasn't really I needed it. It was I want it. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I think probably the most I ever carried in my 20s was about $4,000. And I say that because compared to $15,000, it's not a lot. Right. But if I went back and figured out the interest that I paid on that, it would have been very substantial. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with Bankrate.com actually has amortization or different types of interest rates where you can put in the numbers and it will spit out what you're paying in interest. And so I do that for my clients because I want them to go into shock. Like on a little $5,000 credit card, the difference you said between 10 and 20% over the time period. This is why people with bad credit, they don't know how to get themselves out.
Right.
And so they're going to, in essence, work 2 or 3 jobs, and they're going to struggle financially because of that need versus versus want. Well, my friends have it. I should just go get it. I really, really want it. And let me just give you one of my little tips here. If you want something and you have, let's just say you have your checking account to pay your bills and you have your savings account, there's no rule at your bank that says you have to only have one savings account. So what I do is, let's say I want to buy a car. I open up another savings account and I title it on online banking car. If I want to save money for a vacation or for Christmas presents, I do separate bank accounts, because then it kind of takes it out of that one main account where you pull out those big things. And I think you have to be self-disciplined to set those kind of goals. What do you think?
Absolutely agree with you 100%. And I am known in what I do as the MSI. And people ask, well, what is the MSI? They've heard of FBI, they've heard of the CIA, they've heard of all these other acronyms. But my role in engaging with my clients or participants in my workshop is to be the MSI, the Mind Shift Initiator. I need to get them to a place that they're thinking differently than they were about money. And so some of the behaviors that you were talking about, each person needs to have a customized methodology, because if I dictate a methodology and it's not your flow, so to speak, it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And so there's several different approaches, but that absolutely is one. You open up a separate saving account for each item that each goal that you have, so to speak. Some of my clients, I have them do the envelope method, where they're putting, the monies for certain things in envelopes. And when the envelope is empty, it's empty. You can't go to another envelope and take $5.
That's right.
Or what have you. When that envelope is empty, whether that's your lunch envelope or your gas envelope or what have you, because that sticker shock, so to speak, they don't realize how much money they're spending frivolously until they write it down, until it's right in front of your face. And so, it's about changing behaviors.
Right. And I'm sure you, like me, when you know some of these clients' stories, you kind of go, what are they thinking? Because you can tell, because no one teaches it really. You and I teach it, but most people, they're never taught these things. And so, when I deal with clients and I see collections that come up, and I go, oh my gosh, well, it kind of mind shifted me to, instead of ever owing balances on credit cards, I reverse subsidize. In other words, I will subsidize my approximate credit card statements by paying a check in advance, and therefore I never owe money. If you tend to run late, you can make a payment every other week, and you'll never have a 30-day late payment. But I think that if if you're going to spend your credit card a lot, another shocker for you is go home and write it. If you can't afford it, you shouldn't be buying it. If you are going to buy something, I use credit cards for merchant protection. That's it. I go home, I write a check.
Absolutely.
And then I never owe money. You know why? Because on your credit card statement, it shows what you're paying in interest. And when you see that, it's kind of an eye-opener. But guess what? Most people don't read their credit card statements.
Absolutely. They zero in on what is the minimum monthly payment. I don't care what the balance is, never look over to the side to see the calculation of the interest or late fees or what have you. I'm going to pay this on the 20th, even though it was due on the 15th. I'm paying it on the 20th, and I'm paying that minimum. So they didn't even calculate what the late fee or what portion of that, because most of them don't even look at the cardholder agreement, which is that nice little panel, multi-panel little piece of paper that they get when they first got the credit card. Or the change in terms, little notices that they
don't open those because it looks like junk mail a lot of times.
Absolutely. But those are the rules of the game. And, I mean, you can't play baseball or football or basketball or hockey or volleyball or anything without the rules. And so these documents are the rules to that particular credit card's game, if you will. So it's going to express what are the fees, what do we consider default, when do we report to the Bureau, can you sue us, do you have to go to mitigation first. All those things are spelled out, and the law only requires the credit card company, it gives them some restrictions as to the font size and all of that. But beyond that, it doesn't require them to make sure that the cardholder understands everything that's written.
Right.
It just requires that they make it available to you, that they have to give it to you. But once they've mailed it to you, they check the box, done. So then when things come up, you can't say, well, I didn't know. Well, they'll say, refer to your cardholder agreement in section so-and-so,
Right. Or we mailed you something and, you didn't open it because you thought it was junk mail. And they're unilateral agreements. You can't just change it. It's whatever they say, whatever their terms are, that's what it is.
And when you sign that receipt the very first time you swipe the card, you're agreeing to all those pages of terms that are there. And so when you didn't read them, you can't now say, well, I didn't know or I didn't understand.
And I'm going to bet that you, like me, you do read yours because I read mine.
I absolutely do. But fortunately, I'm in a position I can pay my balance in full each month. But I like to read them and even comparing them one credit card to the next, because this is what I do for a living in terms of teaching and educating people. The fee structures and all of that. My utopia for my clients is to get you to pay your balance in full every month. And then it doesn't impact you what the interest rates are or the late fees, but you still need to know because knowledge is power.
Right. I look at having a credit card really, other than merchant protection, for emergency situations.
Absolutely.
But of course, obviously, you should have money saved up. A lot of people don't have that. And my dad said you should have 6 months worth of savings saved up, because if something happens, how are you going to pay your bills? And that's where people get in trouble. They have no money saved up. And what do they rely on?
Credit cards. And they don't know what the interest rate is. So the card that I'm using might be 20%, 23%, whatever. But I'm focused now on the emergency.
Right.
So again, everything always takes precedence over the true cost of the credit. My dad's famous quote growing up, Lindsay Lofton, was, credit cards should be used by time and not money. And I never understood that when I was younger, but he said it often, so I knew it was important. And so, of course, what is the irony that I grew up and now I'm teaching financial literacy? But what he was saying in that quote was that you're buying that grace period between statements. So I'm not putting something on a credit card because I don't have the money, i.e. I can't afford it, i.e. I'm living outside of my means.
Right.
I'm putting it on the credit card to buy that grace period. In effect, so if I purchase something for $100 and I put it on a credit card, the reality is my $100 is sitting over in an investment, making money for me. That's why I'm not paying the $100 today. So I'm going to access that money prior to the bill day to pay it in full. So now I have made money on the money and still got the merchandise that I wanted or that I needed. Not because I didn't have the funds is not the reason why I put it on a credit card.
Right. Sometimes it just makes you want to kick people and go,
Exactly.
wake up. What are you doing with all this? And if people start actually looking at their credit card statements to see what they're spending in interest, it might be a real eye-opener. But on the other hand, a lot of people procrastinate, and they don't want to look.
They don't want to look.
And then when it comes time to go buy a house or a car, and they wonder why are their credit scores so low, well, guess what? People, a part of that is if you've maximized out the limit of your credit cards, your FICO scores drop. Whereas if you pay them off, guess what? They go up. So that's another issue. I want to talk about children, teens, and credit. Because you know what? It's not taught in the school system.
It's not.
I think it should be, of course.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you do.
Well, I personally, with Bonafide Credit Consultants, I partner with a couple nonprofits. This past summer, I was fortunate to have a contract with the Boys and Girls Club for Tampa Bay. And I did financial literacy, personal money management for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that were in the Boys and Girls Club's summer program. Interesting dynamic, and kids use credit the way their parents use credit, good, bad, or indifferent. And so until they have something that changes that point of reference, they're destined to use credit that way. And so it's always interesting to dialogue with youth to see what their perspective is on money, on credit cards. They don't even factor fees and interest and all of that. That is beyond them. Some of them literally think that plastic is free money. Credit cards.
Listen, adults think that too.
You swipe it and you get your merchandise and, oh, wow, you don't have to worry about paying it back. Because, again, that mindset came from their environment. If collectors are calling your house every night, then you think that that's the norm.
Correct.
And so you're not really thinking, oh, wow, you know what, if I make a debt, I really should pay that off.
They're desensitized to that,
Exactly.
and they think that they think that's
it's just
the norm.
a way of life. Absolutely. And in addition to that, I partner with Salitas House, which is another nonprofit here in Tampa. And they're HUD certified. So during the year, they're typically doing homebuyer education classes and things like that to help adults access some of the funding that's available for first-time homebuyer programs, et cetera. So I assist them in teaching some of those classes from time to time. But during the summer, they have what's called Fit Camp. And so when I tell people Fit Camp, they immediately think exercise, physical fitness, or what have you. But FIT actually stands for Financially Intelligent Teens. And so I've partnered with them for the past 3 years during the summer, and that age grouping is 13 to 17. And so during that 2-week period, we have the opportunity to mold these minds as it relates to finance and personal money management. And we also teach them leadership. So it's not always just about the money. Self-leadership and self-esteem plays a big role in your physical thought process.
Right.
And so we're working with those kids, teach them how to write checks, how to balance checkbooks, the true cost of credit cards, what is a bank, the FDIC, the NCUA, what are they? What does that mean? Why do the banks or credit unions have those stickers that tell you, have those on the windows? We also have our kids then take the concepts that they've learned during the first week. They have to put together a presentation on the concept, and then our kids go to other camps in the Tampa Bay area and present to their peers the concepts that they've learned. So it's an awesome program.
That's a great idea. And I'm going to go back to a story. You made me think of a story. This is probably, let me think how old I am, 25 years ago. Had a friend whose son wanted $200 Nike sneakers when he was about 14. So we're going back to like 1989, 1990. And, of course, at that point, that was a lot of money for a pair. Why? Because all his friends had those sneakers. They were the in thing. Dad, I want. Now, Dad actually made a good living, but Dad was a single dad. So what he did was, and I thought this was very smart, he actually showed his son, he taught his son, how to balance the checkbook, how to figure out, here's my check that comes in every month. Here's all of the bills that I have to pay for us to live every month, all the food, the utilities, all that. Here's the amount that's left at the end of every month, and it wasn't much. So at that point, the son went, now I get it. I get that there's not enough money for me to pay for those sneakers. Now, in a case teaching kids, I think that a lot of times parents just give the kids money, and there's no explanation of it. It's free money. And so, I know people who have adult children that just give the money to the adult children.
Right.
And when you don't teach a child about financial literacy, you're setting them up for failure in life.
Absolutely.
And that, to me, is a sad story. We got to get out there and explain more to a lot more people, because that, in a way, to me, if you look at the not just the world economy but the United States economy, it's not good. And now kids are living at home because they went to college. They can't find a job that's going to allow them to pay back their student loans, and now they're back to living off of mom and dad. And mom and dad are probably saying, oh, my God, when I got out of school, I went and got a job. You don't want your kids living with you forever. So parents, if you're listening, this is not hard to learn how it works. The other thing I'm thinking of is on the back end, when we were talking about credit cards, these companies already know how much they're going to make off of you.
Exactly.
They know it's all computerized and statistical. So when you see that Macy's credit card offer for 10% when you're walking in front of the store, and you go, oh, wow. Well, now you're thinking 10% off. I could go in and spend $1,000, and it means I get $100 off. But, yeah, you just spent $900. And then if your interest rate is bad, it's a high amount because you have low credit scores, well, they statistically know on average what you're going to pay, how long it's going to take you to pay it, and how much money they're going to make. And it's going to way exceed that little 10% they give you.
Absolutely.
You might end up paying 3 or 4 times the amount over a period of years to pay it off. And so comes back to the want versus the need. So I think you got to get them young when you get the kids. Let's talk about budgeting. I mentioned like emergency fund earlier. Give us some budgeting tips.
Budgeting tips. Well, the first rule of thumb is when you write it down, it makes it real. Statistics and all the data have proven that to be true. And so writing a budget, I refer to it as a spending plan versus a budget. And it's just a play on words per se. It's really the same thing, but a budget just sounds so constraining, all about what you can't do, kind of like a diet. This is all the things I can't do. Versus when you say a spending plan, it just means I have to spend money. I'm going to spend money, but I'm going to strategically spend the money, meaning I'm going to already have pre-designated where my monies are going, i.e., and I will know how much money I will have left over when it's done. excuse me, and you'd mentioned the kids. And I think, as a rule of thumb, each parent knows your kids, so you know what is age appropriate and when they're ready. But I think engaging them in the financial conversation about the family's finances is very important as soon as you think it is the right thing to do. And I say that because some kids don't really realize just yet, family business is family business, and we don't need to talk about this with all of our friends and in the streets kind of thing. But
right.
to whatever extent the parent is comfortable, and it doesn't have to be their actual finances. They can do hypotheticals. You got to get them involved in understanding what it means when mom and dad go to work, we make a paycheck. And we don't get the whole paycheck because FICA and Uncle Sam and all these other people will take a bite out of the check before it actually goes into our account.
Right.
And so when that money is in our account, that's all that we have, relatively speaking, until the next paycheck. And with that money, we have to pay utilities and car notes and car insurance and medical insurance and all those things. And so when you want these expensive things, we really need to assess that whole materialism thing, and that's really a family value kind of thing.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that in a minute. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with Pamala McCoy.
Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
Central Payment, your number one credit card merchant service provider in the industry. Providing e-commerce solutions, POS systems, standalone terminals, mobile apps, and much more. Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. Looking for the lowest rates in the industry and number one customer service? Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. That's James Carner, 813-777-4332.
And we're back on the World of Laurie Zoock. My guest, Pamala McCoy, credit consultant, and we're talking about financial literacy. Listen up, people. Important show. Now, I want to talk a little bit about understanding underwriting, the credit stuff.
Right.
My stuff, your stuff. I'm going to let you talk about it first because hot topic.
Well, from underwriting perspective, and all underwriting is approval or denial of your credit request, whether it's a car loan, a credit card, a mortgage, all
Right.
the same. Each entity or organization will have their own policies and procedures that guide their underwriting, but all of them will pull your credit report.
Right. It's the risk factor,
The
as
risk
I call
factor.
it.
And that's why it's referred to as the risk score, the FICO score, your credit bureau score, different names, all the same. It is like your report card, if you will, of how well you have managed your credit. And the higher the score, the lower the risk from the perspective of an underwriter. The lower the score, the higher the risk. And what does that mean to the consumer? The higher the score, the cheaper the credit. The lower the score, the more expensive the credit is. And so we all need to be aware and cognizant of our credit score. And you always want your score to be as high as possible. And if it's not where you want it to be right now, then you need to just put in the work. It's no magical, all these commercials that you see and hear on the radio about, I can fix your credit, I can make it go away, all this magical wave my wand and voila,
Yeah.
It's done. No such thing. As the old folks used to always say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You got to put in the work.
Right.
And nothing can cure bad or opportunistic credit except time. Meaning, if you have some delinquencies in your credit report, it's only going to show the last 24 months. So as you're starting to pay and pay on time, the bad stuff is getting closer and closer to rolling off, i.e. your score is improving. So that doesn't happen overnight. You didn't get in bad debt overnight, so you won't cure the issue overnight. You've got to
Right.
have a mind shift. and be willing, ready, and able to put in the work to improve your score.
Right. Most people don't. You and I know how it works. Most people don't know how it works.
Right.
And a short story, probably within the last year, I had a prospective client call me up. And, the mortgage, she wanted to buy a house. Mortgage person sent me over the credit report. And I'm looking at the report. And so she must have had 10 student loans in default. So, one of the things I do is I actually will refer them to somebody that can help them get them out of default. But I remember the phone conversation, her saying to me, wait, just because I'm in default on my student loans, I can't get a mortgage, I can't buy a house? And I went, that's correct. People are clueless because they don't understand it. Now, you've been doing it much longer than me. I've been doing it for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you when I first started doing it, I was like, it's very, for a normal person who didn't have a financial background, it is very confusing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of misinformation. And so people will go to websites without doing their due diligence. They're not considering the source that's giving that information. And so they'll read something and do it, and it backfires because in credit world, sometimes what you think you're doing is good is actually bad or backwards and can hurt them.
Absolutely.
And so I think you have to find either someone that can actually help you that's reputable. But I want to talk about here credit repair companies, because I despise credit repair companies.
As do I.
Tell me what you think.
As do I. The big, huge red flag. Can you see it flashing, folks? Can you see it swaying in the wind? The biggest red flag. These are the folks that are saying, I got this magic wand, that I can wave and all of your bad credit goes away and your score will go up, 200 points overnight, because I'm this miracle worker. There is no such thing. As I said before, only time can cure bad credit. Right. That is accurate. However, I will say to that as a caveat, you should get your free credit report every year. Each consumer gets a free credit report from each of the 3 major reporting bureaus, which is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can get that free report from www.annualcreditreport.com. That is the only website endorsed by the federal government. So all these other fly-by-nights, I can give you your free credit report, I give you your free credit score, all that kind of stuff. That would be a cause to pause. That is the only website, but I recommend every consumer take advantage of that free report. Get yours, not all at one time, because they basically should have the same information. So I recommend my clients stagger them. So you pull one of them, say you pull your Experian in January, maybe pull your Equifax, May, June, and pull your TransUnion, near the end of the year. The free bureau does not include your score, but the score is a nominal fee. I think it's $7.95, and you only need to pull it on the one, and the first one that you pull, because that's just you're using it for a benchmark. Your score shouldn't change that much, and if you are a work in progress, you don't want to keep pulling your score and paying that $7.95. So if you pull the $7.95 and your score is this, and you say, well, it's not really where I want it, well, the bureau is going to tell you why it is where it is. So whether it's the delinquencies, some charge-offs, repossessions, foreclosures, whatever. And so then you come up with an action plan to fix those things that are causing your score to be low. And then in time, it's going to improve. So if you're not trying to buy a house or a car right now, then you may not need to pull your score again until the beginning of next year.
Right. And when you pull your own credit, it doesn't take any points off your score as it does with the lender.
Correct.
Now, in my case, typically people are coming to me that are wanting to buy a house. And here's another thing. They'll use Credit Karma or one of the credit, like freecreditreport.com, True Credit. And not to say there's anything so much wrong with those sites, except that they may not give as much information as a lender's report, but they don't give actual FICO scores most of the time. And so people will call me and go, well, my Credit Karma says this, but the mortgage person pulled it and it's like, 100 points lower. Well, that's because the ones on monitoring services are basically bogus made up scores.
Absolutely.
But the one that I have people use, and it does cost money, about $60, but they can pull all 3 without any points off through myfico.com. Mm-hmm. Now that one will show you all types of FICO scores, including mortgage. Because the other thing is people, if you are going to purchase a house, or if you're going to purchase a car, or you're going to purchase an insurance policy, there are different FICO scores for each of those industries. Everyone thinks there's just one set. And that's another perception problem, I guess, because most people don't know that. And
Right.
they go, why is there such a difference? Well, there are different algorithms, which
Absolutely.
the FICO company keeps secret, of course, so
Absolutely.
that we don't know.
And again, along those lines, Laurie, if someone were to say, if you do this one thing, your score is going to go up X number of points, there's no way that they can predict that, because to your point, it's this algorithm that has so many things in it. You know, you can't pinpoint and say, if you paid this credit card on time for 2 months, your score is going up X points. There's no way. You can just make a general statement that if you pay your credit cards on time, your score will go up, or what have you. These other third parties, as I like to refer to them, you know, if the government is only endorsing one, that should make you feel a certain kind of way
Right.
about why they're not endorsing the others. From a credit underwriter standpoint, they're going to use the same source that the government is endorsing. So, you know, an underwriter for a mortgage company, they're not going to pull a Credit Karma or whatever. They're going to
Correct.
pull, you know, from what the government is endorsing. And to your point, because the industries are different, when you're talking about life insurance versus a mortgage, they're looking at different factors that are important to them in that industry. You know, when you're talking life insurance or actuary tables and all that, how long are you anticipating this person's going to live and all of that. The mortgage company, yeah, that factors a little bit, but not as much, because, of course, the mortgage is going to have insurances on it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so that's why the scores are different, because they're taking all this bazillions of pool of data, but they're extracting different pieces that are relevant to their industry.
Exactly.
And so that's why they're different. And so even from a consumer standpoint, a credit score this morning could be different than a credit score this afternoon. It's not going to be a huge gap, but it could be different by a few points. And why is that? People always ask, well, if you pull at 8 o'clock, how is it different at 3 o'clock? Well, maybe a payment hit a credit card, and that credit card company happened to be in their update window that they updated
Right.
their data to the bureau. All kinds of things can happen. And so they could be slightly different from morning versus afternoon, or yesterday versus today.
Right.
That
And
kind of
another
thing.
interesting point on that, too, is that different companies, different lenders use different software.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be on FICO 8 or FICO 9, and if one, like an example of a mortgage, if someone pulls your credit on FICO 8 at the same time as another company does on FICO 9, you might have two different scores.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's no really good explanation for us to say why it is, other than
Absolutely.
that's how it's designed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about budgeting financially for a disaster. How do you do that?
Well, we go back to that handy-dandy spending plan. You know, that's kind of, again, the beginning of our roadmap, because that's going to tell you what you have coming in and what you have going out currently. What Laurie's referring to when you're talking about, you know, disaster or emergencies, life is going to happen. It's not will it happen or if it's going to happen to all of us. It could be, you know, unexpectedly you need a set of tires, or the engine, or now you have to buy a new car, or the air conditioner in the house goes out and it's the heat of the summer, or what have you. Well, you're planning for those things. Losing your job, you know, you may not see it coming. And that's when Laurie was referring to her dad saying, you know, at least have 6-9 months worth of your living expenses stashed away somewhere that you have easy access. And the product that money is sitting in, that's where the financial advisor will tell you where that money needs to sit, that you have easier access, but it's working for you. You don't want to put it in a jar because it's not drawing any interest for you. Plus, that's a safety risk. But, you know, there's some products that the penalty is minimal or what have you, and it draws a little bit of interest on that. So your financial advisor will help you with where to place the money. But really, the goal is to have 6-9 months, because, as we all know, when the recession hit, people were losing their jobs and they weren't prepared.
Lost their
And
homes.
Lost
Ended
them
up
because,
homeless.
because they
Didn't have
weren't
money.
prepared. Some of them, they had bad mortgages or what have you. But some of the folks that lost their home to foreclosure during that period of time is because they lost their jobs and they didn't have an emergency fund, and they'd already maxed out their credit cards. And in some cases, they maxed out their credit cards on all this wants and desires. You know, so it wasn't stuff that they needed.
There was no emergency money left on the credit
and
card.
so now that they have a need, i.e. I need to cover my mortgage or what have you, there's no open to buy to do that. And so that is the purpose of planning for the future. We cannot spend everything that we make, you know, no one knows when the end is coming, but we all hope we're going to be here another day. So if you're here tomorrow,
Right.
you're going to need to eat. So,
Exactly.
So you need to plan for that.
It's the common sense factor. It makes me want to slap
Absolutely.
people in the face. Go, wake up.
Yeah, I'm
wake up.
living in the moment. I'm living, that carpe diem. There's a time and a place for everything. But when you're talking about your finances, it is not the place to say, I'm going to spend everything I make. I'm not going to, worry about tomorrow. Let tomorrow take care of itself. That was the philosophy that got some of these folks in trouble.
Now you also do TV segments.
I do.
I do some. Tell me about some of your TV segments.
Wow, probably back in 2012, I think it was, is when it all got started. I got asked to be the keynote for the city of Tampa. And so as a result of that, NBC WFLA's anchor was the MC. And so he pulled me off to the side, and Rod was like, oh, let's talk, And so we met for coffee the following week, and he created a segment for me called Financial Friday. So I did that on the midday news for about 9 months or so, and they changed the formatting of the midday news from an hour to a half hour, so that kind of went away. Then a couple months later, I got picked up again by NBC, but it was for the daytime show. So I was doing the daytime show for probably 6 months or so, and I still do some work with NBC WFLA from time to time. But recently, I've had an opportunity to do a few segments on CTN, which is the Christian Television Network. And so people can see me on that as well. Follow me on Facebook and social media, my Twitter. And I always have it posted there on my website. There's an event calendar. So when segments that I'm doing are airing, all that information will be there, as well as on my social media will be the links where they can find it on YouTube. I have my own YouTube channel, which is Bonafide, B-O-N-A-D.
Right.
So you can find all of a majority of my segments, previous segments on my YouTube channel as well.
Gotcha. I want to talk about something you mentioned earlier, self-esteem and self-leadership. How important is that? How do you develop that, especially with someone who maybe doesn't have it?
Right. It is something that we all need. It's not necessarily natural, but it's like when you bring the term to the forefront, people can focus on it and want to learn more about it. It's foundational. It's about how you feel about yourself, and I say self-leadership. It's about each individual, for all intentional purposes. We are the CEO of self, if you will. And
right.
So we've got this self that we're managing. And just like running a Fortune 500 company, you have to make some tough decisions. Every day is decisions. You want the best for your company. You want the best return on that, et cetera. And so, you can't allow other people always to step in and make those decisions for you. But if you're not confident, I guess, in self or what have you, then you waver on that. And unfortunately, some people kind of zero in on that and exploit it. And so self-leadership is important, not just as it relates to your finances, but you as an individual and being self-sustaining. And there's nothing wrong with people around you, but it's going to give you some discernment.
You have to take control of your own life,
Absolutely.
in essence, and not let other people tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes it comes out, it's the fear factor. People are afraid to make decisions because they think maybe they'll make bad ones. And you brought up earlier a financial planner, which is a very good idea. It should be a fiduciary, somebody
Absolutely.
who's acting in
actually
your best.
licensed.
Yeah. You got. And nowadays, unfortunately, you actually have to check people out. If they are licensed, you find out who the regulatory agency
FINRA
is. Okay.
As it relates for financial advisors, FINRA, FINRA.com.
Yeah.
Any financial advisor who is licensed and their credentials are current, you will find that on FINRA. If they were previously licensed and their credentials are no longer in good standing, you will find that on FINRA as well.
Right. Nowadays, you can use Google also to find out some information. Absolutely. A lot of people get rated on, Yelp or Manta, things like that, and you can find out some things that way. Also, court records,
right.
See if somebody's been sued. If you have that bad gut feeling, it's a red flag right there. If something is not sitting right when you're dealing with someone, especially with financial, because
right.
listen, I could tell you dozens of stories of people who gave their money to somebody that they thought was,
yes.
respectable, and it turns out they're a con artist, a criminal, and not licensed. Don't meet them. This happened to a friend of mine. Don't meet them in a parking lot and give them $25,000 and you've lost your life savings. No, real people who are really in business.
Yeah, that self-leadership and that self-esteem will prohibit you from doing that, because all the radars and the red flags will be going off saying, this is not good, this can't be right, and it's not, because that's now how legitimate financial advisors work.
Exactly. Now, I know you like to inspire and encourage people. So how do you feel when you know you've accomplished those goals?
Wow, it's hard to even put it in words. It is the most phenomenal feeling to have been able to impact someone's life and make a difference. There's no greater feeling than if I've done a workshop or a seminar or one-on-one consultation, and then months down the road you run into this person, or they'll shoot you an email or something, and they talk about the experience, and they talk about, or send me a picture of the keys to their first home, or a picture of their brand new car, the first car they've ever owned, or, their risk score, their FICO score, credit bureau score has gone up, and now they're ready in a position to buy their first home and things like that. There's no greater feeling than knowing I played a role in getting them where they are.
I think that's the same way that you're describing how I feel the same way when someone comes back. And probably, about a year or two ago, I was at a well-known restaurant in the area. And so I was in there with my boyfriend, and young man, the waiter, he looked at me and he goes, "Are you Laurie Zoock?" And I'm sitting here going, "I'm famous. Are you Laurie Zoock?" And I went, "Yeah." And I'm looking at him, I'm racking my brain. He looks familiar, and he gave me his name, and he goes, "Well, about 7-8 years ago, you helped me. And because of how you helped me, I was able to purchase a home and get myself on track permanently," which is the goal, not just to get the home.
Absolutely sustainable.
Right, because if you go to a credit repair company and you don't know what's going on, you're going to just fail once you get to that house and do the same habits over and over.
Right.
But for me, that was probably one of the highlighting moments of doing this, was to have someone actually recognize me and say,
absolutely,
"Thank you so much." And when you get, like me, I'm sure you get the testimonials, even years later, they're like, "Just want to let you know we're still on track."
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, that's the reason for trying to help.
It's
right. It's not about the money. It is about trying to make people change. Your mind shifting initiative there,
absolutely,
and go, wait a minute, I need that aha moment to change my life, because if I keep doing things the same way, isn't that the definition of insanity?
Definition of insanity.
Right. Things are not going to change. Let's talk just briefly about your 5 E's.
And let me just say
yes,
this
sure.
real quickly. In my book, when we were talking about change, on page 50 of my book, the inspiration is life is like photography. You need negatives to develop. And so the life application is, as the word tells us, all things work together for the good. And that means the less desirable things add value in making us the person that we will ultimately become. And the financial application of that inspiration is the negatives that you have or currently are experiencing your finances are merely part of the process. And with the hard work, a beautiful financial picture will be the result. But like photography, the quality of the picture depends on the focus.
Very good analogy. I like
Depends
that.
on the
I
focus.
like that a lot. All right, 5 E's. Tell me about them.
5 E's: educate, empower, evolve, enlighten, and enrich. And those are the principles of my company. Everything that we do, every seminar that we put together, every one-on-one consultation that we do surrounds those 5 E's. When I say educate, that means we're going to provide tools that can be used immediately to strengthen your fiscal health and impact your physical health, meaning your money health and your body health. Empowering enables participants to take control of their financial destiny. Evolution or evolve equips the individuals to make the gradual changes for a lasting impact. Because again, we talked about things being sustainable. There's no quick fixes, so you can't do it today. It's got to change the behavior, the mindset. And enlightening, that imparts transformational insight into their whole financial picture, not just this one little moment in time. And enriching, of course, that unleashes the abundance of wealth, of knowledge, brings to each of the individual. And the other thing that we do at Bonafide Credit Consultants is about generational transfer. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't matter if you don't really get it until you're 45 or 50. All that means is your time horizon, the benefit is shorter than if you'd gotten it at 20. But if you can get it at 45 or 50 and you teach your children and your grandchildren, then generationally it's going to impact your family, which by default impacts the community, which by default impacts the county, the state,
The world.
the world.
Really?
On that economic global scale. And so we got to start somewhere. So the point is, you got to get it as soon as possible.
Right. I mean, you're never too old to learn.
We all need to be life learners.
That's it. Believe me, I've had my share of hard knocks. I think it's the hard knocks and the failures that can either make you weaker or make you
Absolutely.
turn around and step up and become stronger and go, wait, I'm not going to let that happen again because
Yes.
I'm going to change what it is that I'm doing.
And we have to share that testimony with other people, so hopefully they can learn from our mistake and not have to make the same mistake.
Right. One of the best books, I'm sure I mentioned to you at lunch recently, is The Automatic Millionaire. Forgive me, I don't remember the author's name, but I will tell you it was one of the best books I ever read. One of the premise of the book is, obviously you want to start younger. When you get paid, for example, by direct deposit, is to take a portion of that money and put it away into an IRA so you never actually even see it in your bank
Absolutely.
account.
Pay yourself first.
Right. If you pay yourself first over a period of years with the money, the interest compounding, eventually you can become a millionaire just by putting this small amount. Now, of course, I wish I had read that book when I was,
Right.
my teens or early 20s because it would have changed, how things are
Your
now.
mindset.
Exactly. And one of the reasons I mentioned to you is I want to write a book about what I should have written to my younger self as a guide maybe to young teens or teen women, early 20s women to say, you know what, if someone had beaten this into me, but your parents may know a certain amount, but unless they're financial gurus, chances
Right.
of you having that happen, I think, are difficult. Quickly tell me, you got a couple minutes, what's your vision for your company with the future?
Is to continue to be able to impact people's lives through what we do at Bonafide, to have an opportunity to get on even a larger stage, if you will, to impact a larger number of individuals, because I feel strongly about what we do at Bonafide and the freedom that it gives the individuals to fuel their financial potential and to solidify their financial futures. That's really what it's all about. That's really our goal every day that we wake up, is to impact positively somebody's life as it relates to their finances, because at the core of everything, whether it's relational, employment, I often say when you peel back the onion on whatever the situation, there's going to be a dollar sign at the bottom.
Right. Well, people say money can't buy happiness, but it can certainly buy you safety and security financially
Absolutely.
if you have it. Tell us, how can you be reached?
I can be reached at my website, www.bonafidecc.com. That's BONA number 5, D as in dog, C as in cat, C as in cat.com. And my cell phone number is also on the website, but I'll give it to you, 813-495-8568.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me, Pamela. It was great to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
And join me next week on The World of Laurie Zoock. Be safe.